So our discussion for today will be IAS 16, Property, Plant, and Equipment. Okay, this will be in relation to the succeeding standards and topics that we will discuss, such as our borrowing cost and government grant. And then later on, the items that were also discussed here are also going to be related to your IFRS 6, which is the exploration of your mineral resources. Okay, so let's start first with the summary of IAS 16. Okay, so with that, let's start with the objectives. Okay, so the objective of IAS 16 is basically to prescribe the accounting treatment for property, plant, and equipment. Okay, and the main issues that we need to consider in the in accounting for your property, plant, and equipment will of course be the recognition of your assets, the determination of their initial and subsequent carrying amounts through their subsequent and initial measurement, and the amounts that will be recognized in profit or loss later on, either in the form of depreciation or in the form of other expenditures, as well as items that will be recognized in relation to the revaluation of your property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so that's basically the objective. So we go to the scope of the standard. So the scope of the standard will be practically, or the standard will practically deal with all types of property, plant, and equipment, or all assets that are used in the operations of the business, except for items that are covered by other standards, such as first of all items that are covered by IFRS 5. So even though these are property, plant, and equipment, once the company decided, or once the company decides that they are going to sell the asset or sell the non-current asset, then it will be transferred to items held for sale under IFRS 5. Also, biological assets and agricultural produce, these are not considered as part of your property, plant, and equipment if they are considered as part of agriculture or IAS 41, which we already discussed. So basically, to go back, when we talk about bearer plants are still covered by IAS 16 because these are specifically provided by IAS 41 as being covered by IAS 16. Also, we provided an example last time that when there are some animals or biological assets that are used in zoos and other types of recreational facilities, such as ocean parks and others, this will be considered as PPE, okay, and not under agriculture. Okay, next, exploration and revaluation assets, or exploration and evaluation assets, okay, under IFRS 6. So this will be a subsequent topic. So this is not covered by IAS 16. And then all other mineral rights and mineral reserves. Okay, so that's basically still covered by IAS or IFRS 6. Okay, so also the standard does not apply to PPE used to develop or maintain the last three asset or categories of assets. So basically the three items here. Okay, so if we are using, or if we are basically having, or we have PPE, okay, that are used to develop or maintain the categories provided here, then it is also not going to be covered by IAS 16 because it will be going to the specific standard that are covered. Okay, next, the cost model, okay, will be applied to investment property also later on if the investment property is going to be subsequently measured using the cost model. So although under IAS 40 it is still an investment property, for purposes of determining, or for purposes of subsequently measuring the investment property, they can still use the cost model. Okay, that's why they are interrelated. Okay, so next, to specify or to emphasize, the standard applies to bearer plants but it does not apply to the produce of the bearer plants because the produce will now become agricultural produce covered by IAS 41. Okay. So we now go to the recognition of your property, plant, and equipment. So generally speaking, items of property, plant, and equipment should be recognized as asset when it is probable that there is a future economic benefit that will flow to the entity and the cost of the asset can be measured reliably. So that's basically the general criteria for the recognition, similar to the recognition criteria of all types of assets. Okay? So the recognition principle is applied to all property, plant, and equipment. Okay? And of course, we are generally going to use the cost as the initial measurement of the asset. Okay? So the cost include costs incurred initially to acquire or construct the item of property, plant, and equipment and other subsequent expenditures that will result to the addition, replacement, or servicing of the particular asset if it qualifies for capitalization. Okay? IAS 16 does not prescribe the unit of measure for recognition. Okay? Meaning what constitutes an item of property, plant, and equipment. However, it provides us a detail or data as to the cost model, okay, and what are the significant costs that may be related to the capitalization of these items to property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so also, IAS 16 recognizes that parts of some items of property, plant, and equipment may require replacement at regular intervals. Therefore, the carrying amount of an item of property, plant, and equipment will include the cost of such replacements, okay? Okay, if the recognition criteria are met. Okay, similar to what we said a while ago. And the carrying amount of those parts that are replaced is the recognized. So that's why we are going to discuss later on the replacement method also. Okay. Also, we will discuss the inventory method for items of PPE that are insignificant. Okay. Finally, okay, to for the continued operation of a property, plant, and equipment, example an aircraft, it may require regular or major inspections for faults. Okay, regardless of whether parts of the item are replaced. Okay. When each major inspection is performed, its cost is recognized in the carrying amount of the item of property, plant, and equipment as a replacement if the recognition criteria is also satisfied. Okay? That's why there is also what we call group depreciation or composite depreciation. If necessary, the estimated cost of a future similar inspection may be used as an indication of what is the cost of the existing inspection component, okay, when it was acquired or constructed. So basically, this is going to be our guide later on whenever there is a replacement of your parts or repairs. Okay. So we now go to initial measurement. Okay, as provided by the standard, for initial measurement, we are going to recognize it at cost, and the amount of the cost that will be capitalized will depend on the type of acquisition that was made. Okay, we are going to discuss in detail later on the various methods of acquisition, but generally we are going to consider that some acquisition will be in the form of purchases. So in that case, we are going to capitalize the purchase price together with other incidental or costs that are directly attributable to bringing the PPE to its intended location and condition. So this will include also items that are provided here, such as your site preparation, delivery and handling, installation, professional fees, okay, dismantling or the decommissioning cost, as well as other items that are related to the use and disposition of the asset, for as long as we can determine the cost and we can capitalize it later on. Okay. So again, later on, we are also going to encounter some situations wherein there will be proceeds from the particular installation or building or construction of a particular property, plant, and equipment. And in that case, it says here that proceeds from selling items produced while bringing an item of PPE to the location and condition necessary for it to be capable of operating in the manner intended by management are not deducted from the cost of the item of property, plant, and equipment but recognized in profit or loss. Okay? So what does this mean? Because later on you might be wondering, why is it, sir, that whenever we recognize demolition cost, we deduct the proceeds from the scrap? Why is it that there is such particular concept? The concept being provided here, para hindi tayo malito, okay, it simply means that if there are proceeds that are not directly attributable to a particular cost, then the sale will be an outright item in the profit or loss. Okay? However, if the proceeds are directly related to a particular cost, then we can offset that. Okay? So parang example, to give us an idea, tinest natin yung tinest natin yung product. Okay? So may testing cost tayo. So ganyan yung concept niya. Yung testing cost, capitalizable. Okay? Ngayon, nung nag-test tayo, biglang may byproduct lang na ang nangyari is, syempre may lalabas na produce or may generate tayong inventory item, parang ganoon. Yung inventory item or yung nagawang mga products out of the testing, it is not going to be, or yung sale nun, it's not going to be deducted from the cost of the asset. Okay? Kasi separate na yung pagkakabenta nun dun sa mga na-produce. So parang ganoon yung concept niya. Okay? Pero kapag yung example, kasi ang general na ma-encounter mo lang naman later on will be the demolition cost. Yung nag-demolish ka, tapos may scrap, okay? Yung scrap, pwede mo siyang i-deduct doon sa demolition, okay? Later on. Kasi related nga siya doon sa cost na nagastos mo. Okay? Parang ganoon siya. Okay? So, next tayo. If payment of an item of property, plant, and equipment is deferred, okay, so kumbaga it is not a straight payment, then we are going to recognize any difference or any yung component niya na related to interest. Of course, interest na yun. Hindi na siya considered as capitalizable. Okay? Kapag may exchange naman, we also need to consider what type of exchange happened. Nag-exchange ba tayo ng parehas na asset to asset? Did we exchange an asset with a liability? Did we exchange the asset with equity? So we need to consider that. Meron tayong discussion that na ganun in detail. Okay? Also, if the acquired item is not measured at fair value, its cost is measured at the carrying amount of the asset given up. So ito yung kapag may exchange tapos walang walang commercial substance. Okay? So may ganun naman tayong discussion in detail later on. Okay. So we proceed with the measurement subsequent to initial recognition. So generally, according to the standard, alam naman na natin to. Okay, this is also discussed in basic accounting. Upon recognition, for subsequent recognition later on, you will be given an option of either using the cost model or the revaluation model. If you're going to use the cost model, this is the simple recognition of the cost less any accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss. If you're going to use the revaluation model, then you are going to recognize the value of an asset at its fair value and then subsequently depreciate the fair value measured. Okay? So that's basically what revaluation model is. If you can still remember investment property that is measured at fair value, the only difference between the fair value model and the revaluation model is that under fair value, you simply get the fair value and then compare it with the subsequent fair value, and that's already the amount that will be recognized in profit or loss. However, for revaluation model, once you get the fair value, that will be the basis of your subsequent depreciation. Okay, and that will also be the basis of the amount that will be recognized in OCI as revaluation surplus. Anyway, we're going to have an example like that. Okay, so which brings us to the revaluation model. So that's basically the concept here. Okay, under revaluation model, you need to get the fair value and then subsequently depreciate that fair value. Okay, for some situations wherein there is no fair value but there is a replacement cost, then you need to make computations to determine the depreciated replacement cost or the sound value, and that will be the basis already of our fair value there. Okay? And of course, do not forget that in the process of using revaluation model, that there will be an amount recognized in OCI or other comprehensive income, which will be revaluation surplus. Okay? So the revaluation surplus is basically the difference between the new sound value, okay, and the initial or the carrying amount prior to revaluation. And this will be subsequently be amortized also, okay, and it will be recognized in retained earnings later on. Okay, so that will be for revaluation model. Okay, so in the case of revaluation, okay, there is a possibility for the asset to subsequently be impaired. So just like what we discussed in investment property, okay, once na yung asset ay na-impair, the first thing that you need to do is to use first or let the revaluation surplus absorb the decrease, and then any decrease later on that was not absorbed by the revaluation will be recognized na in P&L as impairment. Okay? So once again, meron ding situation that we are going to dispose of a particular asset that is measured using the revaluation model. So in that case, any remaining revaluation surplus will be transferred to retained earnings. Okay? Or basically, you are simply just going to embed or dump the revaluation surplus to retained earnings. So we go to depreciation. Okay, the depreciation of an asset is basically depending on the systematic allocation basis that you're going to use. Okay, there are various depreciation methods. The standard does not prescribe any particular standard or any particular method. Okay, it's up to the judgment of the management or the entity to determine what depreciation method will be used. Okay, the only consideration there is that the depreciation method should reflect the pattern in which the asset's economic benefits are consumed by the entity. Okay, so therefore, whatever depreciation method you are using, the standard will not argue with the entity for as long as they can justify, for as long as the entity can justify the use of that particular depreciation method for a particular asset. Okay? In relation to depreciation, we also need to consider that there should be an annual review of the depreciation method that is used by the company. And if the pattern of consumption of benefits has changed, then the depreciation method should also be changed, and there will be a prospective change. Okay? Or it will be applied prospectively, meaning from the period that the change is going to be implemented and into the future periods that are going to be applied. Okay? So that's going to be considered also there. Depreciation will be charged in profit or loss, obviously. Okay? And the depreciation of the asset will begin when the asset is available for use and continues until the asset is recognized, even if it is idle. So in other words, once the asset is already prepared or is already ready to be used for its intended purpose, regardless if you are using it or not, then depreciation will already start. Okay. Recoverability of the carrying amount. Okay, so this will now go with the concept of your depreciation, your impairment later on. So once there is a probable or there is an indication of impairment, then we need to consider whether the asset is impaired, and with that we need to consider the recoverability of the carrying amount. And the recoverability of the carrying amount will be determined based on what was provided in IAS 36, impairment of assets. So we will discuss that in detail later on. But generally, we will introduce recoverable amount here as the higher between the fair value less cost to sell and the value in use. When we go to impairment of assets, we are going to discuss in detail the concept of value in use. Okay? And then, just an added note, any claim for compensation from third parties for impairments is included in profit or loss when the claim becomes receivable. So in other words, any claim from or to third parties, okay, can be added or deducted depending on the situation. Okay, and then the recognition is the recognition that is whether through retirement or disposals. So basically, when the asset is not going to be used anymore, it's going to be retired or it's going to be disposed of, then we need to recognize the asset from our books. Okay, sometimes the recognition will result to a recognition on another classification of asset. Okay, so such as whenever we recognize a property, plant, and equipment and transfer it to inventory, or recognize the PPE and transfer it to non-current asset held for sale, or recognize the PPE and transfer it as investment property. So whichever case is applicable. So anyway, any difference, okay, in case of the recognition, any difference between the carrying amount and any subsequent proceed or whatever is the result of the recognition will be recognized in profit or loss. Okay, so that's basically the concept there. So this is just an example provided. Okay, finally we go to the disclosure requirements. So again, we hope that disclosure requirements will not be asked in the board examination. Okay, but it's still good that we know what are the main disclosure requirements that are needed. So information about each class of property, plant, and equipment. So meaning for each class. So when you say each class, it pertains to the classifications that we are using, such as land for all land properties, building for all building properties, equipment, furniture and fixtures, delivery truck, whatever classification you used for your business. So this means that for whatever classification you use or the company is using, we need to make disclosures, okay, for each classification that was made. Okay, so these are the basic disclosures. First will be the basis of measuring the carrying amount, the depreciation method, the useful life. Okay, so how did you determine the useful life or the depreciation rate? The gross carrying amount together with the accumulated depreciation and impairment. So this is basically a schedule of your depreciation. Reconciliation of the carrying amount at the beginning and at the end of the period, showing any particular additions that happened, disposals that you did, acquisitions through business combination, revaluation increases or decreases, impairment losses, reversals, depreciation, exchange differences if you are operating in multinational or in various locations or geographical locations, okay, around the world, and other movements, okay, such as donations. Are there any amounts that you lost due to fire or other types of the recognitions? Okay, so those are basically your disclosures there. Aside from that, you also need to recognize other disclosures such as restrictions on title and items pledged as security for liabilities. So if there are any encumbrances relating to your PPE. Expenditures to construct property, plant, and equipment during the period. Okay, if there are ongoing constructions. Contractual commitments to acquire property, plant, and equipment, because these are major acquisitions. So this will affect the decisions of the company. So this should be disclosed. Compensation from third parties for items of property, plant, and equipment that were impaired, lost, or given up. Okay, that is included in profit or loss. So basically, most of the time, this will be talking about the insurance that is covering your assets. Okay, because generally, although it is not going to be offset, it is still going to be recognized so that we know, okay, whether the loss are actual sustained losses or if these are artificial losses that are covered by insurance. Okay, for revalued property, plant, and equipment, there will be other disclosures such as the effective date of the revaluation, whether an independent valuer was involved, because generally, if we're going to talk about revaluation, this should be revalued by an independent party. Okay? For each revalued class of property, plant, and equipment, carrying amount that would be recognized had the asset been under cost model. So basically, if you are using revaluation model, you also need to make computations if you are using cost model. However, the other way around is not applicable. If you are using cost model, you do not need to make computations under revaluation. Okay. Next, the revaluation surplus, including changes during the period and any restrictions on the distribution of the balance to shareholders. Okay. In addition, entities with property, plant, and equipment stated at revalued amounts are required to make disclosures under IFRS 13 fair value measurement. So, whatever disclosure requirements that are provided in IFRS 13, it needs to be satisfied if you are using the revaluation model for property, plant, and equipment. Okay, so that's basically the summary of our standard. Okay, wait lang. Ay, akala ko may nagtanong. May pumasok lang pala. Okay, sige, tuloy natin. So with that, we are now going to go to the details of our discussion, which will be characteristics up to other issues that we need to address when it comes to property, plant, and equipment. So we first go to the characteristics of property, plant, and equipment. So basically, in order for us to recognize a property, plant, and equipment, what are the characteristics that we need to look for? Okay? So, first, it needs to be a tangible asset, meaning there should be a physical substance. Okay? This will distinguish our property, plant, and equipment from intangible assets later on. So, property, plant, and equipment must be tangible. Next, it should be used in normal operations, meaning it is used in the in whatever purpose, okay, or whatever is the registered purpose of a particular business. Okay, so it is going to be used in the normal operations, and it should be long-term in nature, because if the asset is only usable in a period of 1 year or less, then it is not necessary for us to capitalize these items. It is better for us to expense them, because basically it's just going to be expensed at the end of the period. So it needs to be long-term or long-term in nature. So after that, once you have already identified that the characteristics are met, take note that all of these must be met. Okay? All of the characteristics must be met, and now we can go to the recognition criteria provided by the standard. We already know this, okay, as provided in the summary a while ago. Now we are going to look for the cost of the asset and whether there is a probable future economic benefit. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to do there. We already established that the initial measurement of your property, plant, and equipment must be at cost. Okay? And the cost of your, or the elements of the cost will be generally the purchase price. Okay? If you are not going to purchase it, okay, then we're going to go to number 2. Okay? So anyway, purchase price including non-refundable purchase taxes after deducting trade discounts and rebates. If you can remember, this is also the criteria that we are following when we are computing for the cost of the inventory. Okay? So it's the same. Basically, it's the same for PPE and inventory if we are going to purchase it. Okay? Next, we are also going to consider cost directly attributable to bringing the asset to the location and condition necessary for it to be capable of operating in the manner intended for or by the management. So this is basically directly attributable cost. Okay? So for some property, plant, and equipment items, this is also part of the cost that are capitalizable. Okay? What makes PPE and inventory different is the third component, which is your present value of decommissioning and restoration cost, to the extent that they are recognized as obligations. So meaning, at the time of the capitalization of a property, plant, and equipment, if we already know, or you can already estimate the amount of decommissioning or restoration that we need to do in order for us to satisfy any contractual or legal obligations, then the decommissioning and restoration cost must already be capitalized. Okay? So it's basically like this. Kapag ikaw ay may asset, Pagkatapos, ina-anticipate mo na kapag mag-end na yung useful life ng asset, ay gagastos ka para i-dismantle, gagastos ka para baka kunyari yung asset na yan medyo hazardous pala, so hindi mo siya basta-basta pwedeng itapon lang. So gagastos ka ng significant cost para mai-dispose yan safely. Baka may mga toxic waste yan, etc. etc. Or baka kailangan mong iayos yung pinaglagyan mo. Like example, baka i-install mo yung PPE na yan sa isang land area or sa isang baka mayroon kang contract with the government na at the end of the period kailangan mong tanggalin yan, tapos i-restore mo kung saang lugar mo man yan nilagay. So basically, that's going to be capitalizable also, provided na you can estimate it already at the time of the capitalization. Kasi kung saka mo lang yan madidetermine kapag let's say for example, i-decommission mo na or tatanggalin mo na yung asset, i-retire mo na yung asset, then hindi na yun pwedeng i-capitalize. Kaya it's better, kung gagastos ka rin lang naman, better na i-capitalize mo na siya at the time na ini-install mo pa lang yung asset, para at least mas kwan kasi siya, kumbaga parang mas streamline mo yung papasok na expense doon sa iyong income statement later on. As compared to minsanan mo lang i-recognize yan, edi one time big time din na papasok sa financial statement mo, may significant na drop doon sa net income mo later on. So mas maganda yung ganito. Okay, provided na alam mo dapat ma-present value mo yan later on. Okay? So yun yan. So also we need to stop the capitalization of the property, plant and equipment kapag na-meet na tong condition na to. Okay? So ibig sabihin naka-ready na yung asset. So mahaba yan Okay, pero ang concept lang yan, kung ready na yung asset, ano pang i-capitalize mo? Wala ka naman ng ibang magagastos, di ba? So basically, kung ready na lahat, kung ready na yung asset mo, regardless kung ginagamit mo or hindi, yun na, stop ka na ng capitalization, all other cost will be expensed already. Okay? So we now go to the measurement of the cost. Okay? Again, the measurement of the cost was already provided in the summary of the standard, pero to specify, kasi madami tayong methods of acquisition, always remember na ang kinakapitalize nating cost should be equal to the cash price equivalent. So, ang pinakahinahanap natin dyan is yung actual na gastos from or dun sa time na ginagawa mo mismo yung asset. Kaya dapat cash price equivalent yan or present value. So, yun yung usual na nagpe-play na dalawang term. Yung cash price equivalent, magkano yung magagastos mo kung mismo ngayon na lahat yung bayad, or present value. What is the discounted amount of all future payments kung ngayon siya mangyayari. So, yun yung concept nun. Okay? Kaya nga sinabi natin kanina na kapag yung payment ay deferred beyond the normal credit terms, the difference will now become part of interest na hindi capitalizable. Okay? Except if yung interest na nagagastos mo ay pwedeng i-capitalize covered by IAS 23, borrowing cost, and separate topic pa yan ulit later on. Sa part 2 na yan ng ating discussion. So, punta na tayo dun sa mga specific, okay? Specific gastos or specific costs that are related to our PPE. So, unahin natin yung land. Okay? So, land muna tayo. So, syempre, pag land, kasama dyan yung pagkakabili. O, di ba? Kasama yan dun sa mga main. Okay? Main na contents natin. Purchase price, including other necessary costs such as broker's commission or kung ano man yung mga directly attributable cost. After mong bilhin, kailangan mo ring i-recognize as capitalizable yung mga closing cost, such as yung title, attorney's fees, recording fees. Kasi lahat yan, i-register mo pa yan sa sa Registry of Deeds. Okay, tapos kailangan pang matransfer talaga yan sa pangalan ng entity. Okay? Next, kapag nakuha mo na yung legal title, nakuha mo na lahat ng right, okay, from the first two parts, you need to consider the next part, which is yung cost of preparing the land in the condition that it is going to be used, such as yung surveying, okay, grading, filling, draining, and clearing. So yan yung mga, kasi di ba, of course, if you have a land property, most of the time yung tawag dito, yung quality ng lupa is not of whatever you intend it to be. So ibig sabihin, kailangan mo pang ayusin yan, kailangan mo pang ipapantay, baka tabingi yung ating tabingi yung ating lupa, baka may mga loose na soil yan, so kailangan mo siyang i-fill, kailangan mo siyang i-compress, ganyan. So yung mga yon gagawin mo pa. Draining, kasi baka doon sa lupa mo may area na sobrang malalim, tapos doon naipon yung mga tubig, tapos hindi mag-drain, ganyan. So ayusin mo pa yon, etc. etc. Clearing, syempre, lalo na kapag bumili ka ng property from an area na hindi talaga nagalaw ever since, so madaming halaman, madaming grass, etc. So mga ganyan, okay? So ano pa yan? Syempre, recognize mo pa yung unpaid taxes. Babayaran mo yan. Pero take note, unpaid taxes prior to the date of acquisition. That is assumed by the buyer. Take note, dapat in-assume mo. Okay? Kasi kung hindi mo in-assume, ibig sabihin hindi ikaw yung nag-bear ng or hindi mo kinonsider na kasama yan sa babayaran mo, then hindi mo siya pwedeng i-capitalize. Okay? Tapos take note, dapat prior to acquisition lang ha. Yung mga subsequent na taxes, it will be a normal taxes and licenses already. Okay? Tapos yung mga liens, mortgages, or encumbrances on the property, kasama yan sa capitalizable cost. Okay? Tapos, special assessments for local government maintained improvements such as pavements, street lights, sewers, and drainage systems. Okay, yan yung mga yan. Kasama yan sa capitalizable sa'yo. Okay? You might be questioning or you might be asking, sir, bakit kailangan kami ang magbayad niyan? Okay? Or bakit kailangan i-capitalize yan? Okay? Huwag na nating tanungin kung bakit ikaw yung magbabayad. Kaya kapag siningil ka ng gobyerno, huwag mo nang awahin yung government. Okay? Pero, basically, the concept there is, with these improvements, the value of your asset will also increase. So, pag tumaas yung value ng asset, okay, parang ang labas dyan, ang nag-contribute ng increase in the value is basically ito. So, i-capitalize mo yung amount ng special assessment doon sa ating lupa. Okay? So, basically, that's the rationale kung bakit ganun. So, parang ang labas niyan, ito yung nagastos for the improvement or the betterment doon sa ating asset. Okay? I-recognize mo rin yung option paid to acquire the land. Okay? So, option paid to acquire the land. So, i-recognize mo lang yung option kapag in-acquire mo na yung lupa. Kasi parang ganito. Paano kapag nagbayad ka ng option money? So, balikan mo yung nasa business law or nasa RFBT natin. Pag nagbayad ka ng option money pero hindi mo in-acquire yung lupa, hindi capitalizable yun. Okay? Kapag, kunyari, ang ginawa mo, nagbayad ka ng option money dun sa parehas na lupa. Okay? Kunyari, dalawa yung kino-consider mong lupa, land 1 at saka land 2. Pagkatapos, yung land 1 lang ang ating yung land 1 lang ang ating binili. Yung land 2, hindi. So, yung option money na binayad mo sa land 2, expense outright na yon. Yung option money na binayad mo para kay land 1, na i-acquire mo, capitalizable. Okay? So, yun yung consideration natin. Okay, so yun yung item natin dyan. So, check mo yun ha. Okay, next. Cost incurred to induce tenants to vacate premises and cost of relocating and restructuring or reconstructing property belonging to others. Ayan. Hirap, no? Huwag ka nang bumili ng lupa. Okay. Initial estimate of restoration cost for which the entity has a present obligation. Okay, yan yung parang decommissioning din later on. And then any additional land improvements that have been identified, that have indefinite useful life, such as cost of draining, clearing, grading, leveling, and filling, surveying, subdividing, and other permanent improvements. Okay? Importante ito, okay, kasi dapat indefinite useful life. Kasi kapag may land improvement tayo, pero meron siyang useful life, separate na siya dito. Okay? So, ang land improvement na merong useful life or may definite na useful life, iba ang treatment. It will be capitalized as a different asset and it is going to be depreciated based on the depreciation method that you use. Okay? So, yan siya. So, anong mga example ng land improvements na depreciable or separately recognized from land? Ito na yung mga private driveways, walk or yung mga daanan, mga sidewalks, fences, parking lot, drainage and water systems na pwede mong ma-consider as depreciable, cost of trees, shrubs, plants, and other landscaping. So, itong mga to, different na category siya land improvement na yan. Okay? Yan. Punta na tayo kay building. Okay? So, si building, kapag bumili ka ng building, ano yung mga capitalizable cost? Almost similar din sa land. So, yung purchase price, katulad din nung nasa lupa, yung assumption of any liens, encumbrances, options paid to acquire the building, unpaid taxes, similar din, cost incurred to induce the tenants to vacate premises, tapos cost of getting the building in the condition for its intended use. So in other words, ito yung, syempre, kailangan mo pang ayusin yung building, gagastos ka ng repainting, kailangan mong i-remodel, i-renovate mo pa kasi may mga lumang areas kaya. So lahat ng mga yun, capitalizable. Kasi yun, binili mo na yung building. Okay? Kapag nag-self-construct ka, ibang usapan naman yun. Ito yun. Okay? Kapag nag-self-construct ka ng building, ang gagawin mo ngayon, kailangan mong gumastos ng materials, labor, overhead. Alam mo na yan, yung usual na parang manufacturing cost. Kailangan mong bayaran yung architectural cost, okay, supervision, etc. Excavation, okay. Hindi mo ilalagay sa land to, ha. Syempre, nag-excavate ka para doon sa building. So, capitalizable yan sa building. Insurance cost, okay, and safety inspection, cost of temporary structures built during the construction, and interest on borrowings made on finance to finance the construction. Ito yung borrowing cost na na-covered ng IAS 23. Okay? Kasi malamang considered yan as capitalizable cost for as long as the construction will be, or the constructed asset is a qualifying asset. Pero later na yung discussion na in detail. Okay? Tapos to emphasize, itong mga to, these are not included as the cost. Okay? As cost of self-constructed asset. Una, internal profits or savings on self-construction. Okay? So, hindi yan pwedeng i-recognize as capitalizable. Cost of abnormal amounts of wasted material, labor, and other resources due to inefficiencies. Okay? Kasalanan mo yan. So, hindi yan pwedeng i-capitalize. Cost of uninsured hazards or claims for uninsured accidents. Okay? So, ito yung mga uninsured, di ba? Kasi ang concept niyan, capitalizable na sa taas yung mga ito, insurance cost and safety inspection fees. So, kung hindi mo to ginastos at may nangyari doon na hazard, nagbayad ka, hindi na capitalizable. Kasalanan mo yan eh. Okay? Tapos, cost of private driveways, walks, and others that are not included in the building's blueprint. Kung kasama sa blueprint, kasama sa building. Kung hindi kasama, land improvement. Ayun sa taas, di ba yun yung mga yan? Okay, land improvement yun. Okay. Next, punta tayo kay building improvement ngayon. So, ano naman ang building improvement? Okay? So, ito yung meron ka ng building, ready na lahat-lahat, pero kailangan mo pang i-improve, okay, subsequent to the occupancy of whatever entity or whoever is going to occupy the property. So, building improvements will be cost relating to subsequent or incurred subsequent to occupancy of a purchased building or subsequent to completion of a self-constructed building that either increases the useful life of the building or improve its current state. So, ibig sabihin, building improvements that are capitalizable must satisfy yung concept ng improvement or betterment. Okay? So, kapag sinabi nating improvement or betterment, ito yung general na nag-increase yung useful life, nag-increase yung productive capacity, bumaba yung cost of monitoring or cost of servicing the particular asset, yung mga ganon. So, kapag na-meet yun, considered siya as building improvement. Pero pag hindi, like example, nag-repaint ka pero hindi mo naman na-feel na dahil nung nag-repaint ka, or hindi mo naman masabi na dahil nag-repaint ka ng wall, kunyari, i-considered na siya as nag-increase ng useful life, na ganon, or other kinds of betterment. So, hindi siya pwedeng makonsider as capitalizable. Kaya nga, kailangan mong i-distinguish ang repairs and maintenance sa building improvements. Okay, magkaiba kasi yan. So, we now go to equipment. Ano naman ang capitalizable cost ng equipment? So, ganun din. Pag binili mo yung mga usual, Parang yung mga purchase prices din and other directly attributable cost ng purchase. Kasama na rin yung freight handling charges, yung insurances while in transit, etc. Okay? Tapos, cost of necessary special foundations or platform. Okay? Na kailangan mo sa installation. Okay? So, kailangan mo rin i-capitalize yung assembling and installation cost. Yung cost of testing. Okay? Tapos, the initial estimate of decommissioning or restoration kapag mayroon kang kailangan gastusin. Okay? Basta kaya mo siyang ma-estimate. Okay? So, yun yan. Next tayo, kailangan mo rin i-consider na itong mga to hindi siya capitalizable later on. Okay? So, yung relocating, pag kunyari, na-install mo na, lilipat mo, relocating is a normal expense, it is not capitalizable. Cost of training, hindi din yan capitalizable. Cost of dismantling and removing the old equipment belonging to the entity prior to the installation of the new equipment. Kasi, kunyari, may old equipment, tapos magkakabit ka ng bagong equipment, hindi mo pwedeng i-capitalize yung demolition or yung dismantling nung luma. Kasi yung luma, dapat kinapitalize mo noong kaka-install mo nung luma. Diba? So, ganun yun. Kaya nga meron ka dapat in-estimate na decommissioning dito. So, kung ngayon mo lang ginastos para maka-create ka ng bagong asset or para ma-install mo yung bagong asset, kasalanan mo na yun. So, expense mo yun outright. Okay? So, yun yung mga item natin dyan. Okay, so yun yan. So, now, balik tayo. Punta na tayo sa mga klase ng settlements. Okay? Or klase ng payments. Okay? Yan. So, wait lang. Check ko lang baka may nagtanong. Wala pa naman. Okay. So, punta na tayo sa mga klase ng... So, let's proceed doon sa types of settlement. So, una natin yung paano kapag may lump sum purchase. In other words, we purchase items of property, plant, and equipment in a basket price. So, pag sinabi nating basket price, iisang amount para sa lahat. Okay? So, para kang bumibili ng kunyari mga parang fruit salad package, ganyan, okay? So, yung mga ganyan, pag Christmas, di ba? So, anyway, ganun. Kunyari, disposal group ng isang entity, binili natin. Okay? So, ibig sabihin, meron tayong ngayong items of property, plant, and equipment that is offered to us in a basket price. So, anong gagawin daw? If the acquisition is in a lump sum price or basket price, ang gagawin natin is we are going to allocate the cost to the individual assets based on their relative fair values or relative fair market value approach. So, yun lang yung kailangan mo i-consider. Okay? So, ratio and proportion lang ang gagawin mo. Okay? Next consideration, yung ating demolition cost. Okay? Ang demolition cost, okay, matagal ng issue yan, kaya nga nag-issue ang FRSC, okay, at saka ang PICPA ng pronouncement kung ano ang treatment ng demolition cost. Okay? Ang general rule is ito. Okay? Ang ating demolition cost ay capitalizable depende kung anong reason kung bakit mo dinemolish. Okay? So, example ito, kung meron ka daw old structure na dinemolish mo, tapos ang reason is to make way for the construction of a new building, then the demolition cost will be capitalizable to the new building. Okay? Kung ang capitalizable cost mo or kung yung demolition cost mo naman, kaya mo dinemolish yung old building kasi gusto mong i-prepare yung asset or yung lupa, gagawin mo siyang investment property later on, kaya pinapaganda mo, then ang labas dyan, sa land mo siya i-capitalize. So, basta ang concept yan, depende kung ano yung dahilan. Tapos, just like what we said, ito, any proceeds from the sale of salvage materials from the demolition are deducted from the demolition cost that is capitalized to the new building. Okay? So, ito yung pinaka-specific na example. May demolition cost ka, may scrap kang nakuha, binenta mo, ininet mo yon. Pero all others na mapoproduce mo, okay, na ma-generate mo from the capitalization or the preparation of the asset, lahat ng mga yun, separate siya kapag nabenta mo. Okay? So, yun. So, next we go to exchange. So, ano ba yung mga klase ng exchanges? Pwede kang mag-exchange ng asset, mag-exchange ng liability, mag-exchange ng equity. Okay? So, kapag nag-exchange ka ng asset for another asset, okay? ang kailangan mong i-consider kung meron bang commercial substance. How do you determine if there is commercial substance? Ang lagi mong tatandaan dyan ay kung magkaiba yung cash flow characteristic nung asset na give up mo at saka yung asset na tatanggapin mo, may commercial substance yan. In other words, magkaiba yung economic benefit nung asset na give up mo at saka nung asset na matatanggap mo, may commercial substance yan. So in that case, ang gagawin mo, order of priority, i-check mo tong mga to. Ang una mo nga hanapin is yung fair value ng asset na give up mo. Tapos magdagdag ka kung may cash kang binayaran, bawasan mo kung meron kang cash na natanggap. Okay? Kapag wala, punta ka sa letter B, kunin mo yung fair value ng asset na na-receive mo. Okay? Kapag wala, letter C na ang gagawin mo, punta ka lang, kunin mo yung carrying amount ng asset na give up mo. Tapos plus mo yung binayad mo, bawas mo kung may natanggap ka. Okay? Ngayon, kung walang commercial substance, in other words, parehas lang yung cash flow characteristic, parehas lang yung benefit na madederive mo from the asset na give up mo at saka yung asset na natanggap mo, ang gagawin mo lang, kunin mo na lang yung asset received. Okay? Or the asset received will be measured at yung letter C lang. So, carrying amount of the asset given up plus cash paid or cash received. Okay? So, yun lang yan. Okay. Paano kapag meron tayong issuance of equity or debt instrument? Okay? So if the asset acquired will now be measured using this order of priority. Hanapin mo yung fair value of the asset received, tapos kunin mo yung fair value of the instrument issued. Okay? Pero generally kasi, magkaiba yan eh. Okay? Kapag ang ginawa mo is nakatanggap ka ng asset, nag-credit ka ng liability, usually IRE ang ginagawa mo dyan. Okay? IRE, or ibig sabihin, kunin mo muna yung fair value of the liability issued, tapos yung fair value of the asset received, tapos saka mo kukunin yung book value or the carrying value of the liability. Kapag naman debt instrument, kapag naman equity instrument yan, RII. Okay? Or hanapin mo muna yung fair value of the asset received. Okay? Tapos saka mo kukunin yung sa fair value ng instrument issued. Pero magkaiba ulit yon. Magkaiba na naman yung situation kung traded sa active market yung shares. Kasi in that case, kapag traded sa active market yung shares, yun ang magiging basis ng makakapitalize na cost. So case-to-case basis yan, kailangan mong i-consider kung ano yung mas reliable between the two. Yung fair value ba na nanggaling sa atin or yung fair value na manggagaling doon sa matatanggap natin. Okay, so yun yung i-consider natin dyan. Kaya wag mo lang kakalimutan yung IRE kapag debt instrument, tapos RII kapag equity instrument. Yan. Pero ang pinaka-concept natin dyan, kung ano yung mas reliable na fair value, yun ang gagamitin natin as the initial amount. Okay? Tapos, we go to acquisition ngayon. So, paano kapag naman nag-acquire tayo using donation? Okay? So, may nag-donate sa atin. Dalawa lang naman ang klase ng donation. Yung donation na nanggaling sa shareholders natin or yan ay internal or related party at yung donation na nanggaling sa third party. Okay? So, kapag yan ay unrelated party, income mo agad yan kung walang condition. Okay? Kapag yan naman ay shareholder or owner mismo ng ating company tapos nag-donate, donated capital ang papasukan niya. Equity ang papasukan. Ito ang papasukan niya, profit or loss. Kapag government grant, depende kung ano yung provision ng government grant, basta i-account natin siya, but may ganito. Okay, so we are going to you're going to apply PAS dito. We're going to use PAS 20. Ba't siya nagganon? Okay. Yan. Kung government ang nag-donate sa atin. So, yan yung consideration natin dito. Of donation. Okay, so natapos na tayo doon sa initial measurement, tapusin na natin yung subsequent measurement. Okay? So ano ngayon ang mangyayari for subsequent measurement? Just like what we discussed, di ba? Meron tayong subsequent measurement. Ang pwede mong piliin as the entity, okay, is either gagamit ka ng cost model or revaluation model. Yan lang ang pipiliin mo. And it must be applied to an entire class of property, plant, and equipment. Okay? Ano ibig sabihin nun? pag sinabing entire class, per classification, hindi pwedeng paiba-iba. So, kunyari, may lupa ka, kung lahat ng lupa, kung yung meron kang class ng lupa or group of properties na land, kung cost model siya, cost model lahat. Kung revaluation, revaluation lahat. Hindi pwedeng paiba-iba ang model. Ganun lang naman yung ibig sabihin nun. Okay? Tapos, alam na natin yung cost model, yan yung pinakamadali. Ang gagawin mo lang, cost minus accumulated depreciation and accumulated impairment loss. So, paulit-ulit na yan. Okay? So, sa pagde-depreciate natin, we already discussed na kailangan sundan natin yung pattern of the benefits that we are using. Okay? And, we need to consider kung ano yung depreciation method na gagamitin natin. Okay? In the choice of your depreciation, may mga specific na methods that are usually being applied or implemented or being used by the company. At ang pinakasikat dyan sa mga depreciation method na yan is number 1, yung straight line. Okay, yan yung pinakamadali. Okay? So, pag sinabi nating straight line, kunin mo lang yung cost, ibawas mo yung residual value, kasi divide mo yung useful life, yun na yun. So, yan yung pinakamadali. Kung ayaw mo ng straight line, pwede ka namang mag-SYD or sum of the year's digits. Okay? So, ang gagawin mo doon, you're going to depreciate the asset based on the SYD. Okay? So, ang gagawin mo doon, ito yung formula. Okay? Kasi ang gagawin mo, yung denominator mo later on sa pagdedetermine ng fraction will be dependent on the SYD denominator. Okay? So, di ba, alam naman na natin na ang dahilan kung ba't siya tinawag na SYD kasi ito total lang natin yung years. Okay? So, parang ganito yung concept niya, di ba? So, alam ko naman, alam nyo na rin yun. So, balikan lang natin just to emphasize. Pag sinabi natin na sum of the year's digits, so, kunyari, ang useful life ng asset ay 5 years. So, ibig sabihin, kukunin natin lahat yung digits ng useful life niya pag-a-addin natin. So, kung 5 years yun, 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. So, 15 ang sum ng year's digits. So, ganun lang yun. Okay? So, ito na yung magiging denominator natin for purposes of determining the depreciation rate. Okay? So, sa unang taon, that's going to be, kung unang taon yon may 5 pang naiwan, di ba? So, 5 divided by 15. Second year, 4 over 15. Third year, 3 over 15. Fourth year, 2 over 15. Tapos yung last year, 1 over 15. So, ganun lang siya. Yun lang naman yung consideration natin dyan. Ngayon, hindi kasi natin pwedeng gamitin lahat yung ganyang method. Paano kung 20 years yung life? 20 plus 19 plus 18, di ba? Kaya nga ang gagamitin nating formula is ito. Or basically, n times n plus 1 divided by 2. Or, so ang n natin yung number of years. So 5 times n plus 1. So 5 plus 1 times 6. So times 6. Tapos divide mo ng 2. O yun din lang yun, 15. So kunyari 20 years ang useful life, 20 times 21 divided by 2. So 210 ang ating denominator. Kapag kunyari 50 years yung life niya, edi 50 times 51, tapos i-divide mo ng 50. Ay, ng 2, sorry. So, ay, times 2 ginawa ko. Sorry. So, 550 divided by 2. So, yun. Yun yung mga denominator natin. Okay, so yun lang naman yun. Kaya importante rin na alam mo yung pagko-compute nito, ng denominator. Okay? So, yun siya. Tapos, meron din tayong method na tinatawag na double declining balance method, which is basically twice the straight line. Okay? Tapos, ang difference lang or ang kailangan mong tandaan dito, di ba sa double declining balance method, ini-ignore natin ang ating ini-ignore natin ang ating residual or scrap value. Okay? Di ba, may example tayo dyan. Tapos, meron din tayong pwedeng gamitin na units of production method. Meron tayong tinatawag na input method at saka output method, or yung units na nagamit at yung units na produce. Okay, may ganun siya. So, depende kung ano yung possible na method. Basta ang concept lang nun, ratio and proportion din lang ulit. Okay? Tapos, we go to specific issues such as yung depreciation ng leasehold improvement. Ang depreciation ng leasehold improvement will be the shorter of the life at saka yung lease term ng ating property. Kasi parang ang concept niyan, kung may leasehold improvement ka, may inuupahan kang property, tapos nag-develop mo siya, gumastos ka significantly para mapaganda yung property, tapos sabihin natin ang useful life ng improvement ay 10 years, kaso yung upa mo doon hanggang 5 years lang, tapos hindi na mare-renew, ganon. So ang mangyari doon, 5 years mo lang siya i-depreciate, hindi 10 years. Okay? So ganun lang naman yun. So kailangan mo i-consider yung renewal option. Okay? Kung probable na ma-exercise ang renewal, edi i-consider mo siya sa pagko-compare ng useful life at saka lease term. Pero kapag hindi probable, wag mo na i-consider. Okay? Tapos, yung change in depreciation method. Okay? So, kapag nagkaroon ng change in depreciation method, useful life or residual value, or whatever changes that will be relating to your asset, ang gagawin mo lang is apply it prospectively. Okay, so parang change in accounting estimate lang yan. Okay? Paano kapag may major part na ni-replace? Okay? So the cost of the replacement part is recognized while the carrying amount of the replaced part is derecognized. So parang normal na replacement. Capitalize mo yung bago, tapos kung magkano yung carrying amount ng luma, tanggalin mo. Okay, so ganun lang. Pero pag hindi mo daw ma-determine yung carrying amount ng replace na part, ang gagawin mo, you use the cost of the replacement as an indication of what the cost of the replaced part was at the time it was acquired or constructed. Okay, so parang ang gagawin mo doon, as if yung bago, yun din yung nagastos ng luma, yun yung i-computan mo ng depreciation, yun yung tatanggalan mo ng, or yun yung tatanggalin mo later on. Okay? Revaluation model tayo, yung pahapyaw lang para hindi masyadong mahirap. So, ang gagawin mo lang naman sa revaluation model, okay, di ba, kukunin mo nga yung property, plant, and equipment. Pagkatapos, kukunin mo yung fair value, yun yung subsequently mong i-measure, or subsequent mong i-depreciate. Kaya nga, fair value at the date of revaluation less any subsequent accumulated depreciation and subsequent accumulated impairment loss. So, parang cost model, pero hindi cost ang dine-depreciate mo. Ang dine-depreciate mo, fair value. Okay, so yun yun. Tapos, with the revaluation model, meron tayong revaluation surplus na i-consider. So, paano mo i-compute ang revaluation surplus? That's basically the difference between the fair value at saka yung carrying amount. Yun na yung lalabas na revaluation model. Gross of tax, huwag na natin munang pag-usapan kung bakit gross of tax yan. Kasi later on, kapag ang dinidiscuss na natin is yung mga liabilities kasama yung deferred tax liabilities, wag na net of tax na to later on. Pero doon natin i-explain pag doon na yung topic. Okay? So again, in determining the fair value, di ba diniscuss natin kanina na para makuha mo ang fair value, sundan mo yung requirement ng PFRS or IFRS 13. Okay. Sige. So paano mo daw ma-determine ang fair value? Using the cost approach. Okay? Kunyari, hindi mo alam ang fair value kasi walang given na fair value. Ang alam mo lang, replacement cost. Okay? So, ang replacement cost mo ngayon, ang gagawin mo dyan, i-depreciate mo siya. So, ito yung consideration mo. So, kailangan mo munang alamin yung total economic life. The total economic life is the effective life plus plus any remaining economic life. Okay? So, in other words, ilang taon mo pa ba talaga mapapakinabangan yung asset? Okay? Tapos, pag nakuha mo na yung total yung total na effective life, divide mo ng total economic life, yun yung percentage ng depreciation mo. Yun yung gagamitin mo para ma-compute mo yung depreciation ng asset. It's going to be the percentage depreciation times the replacement cost. Okay? Yung nakuha mo dun sa second bullet point, yun yung gagamitin mo dito para makuha mo yung depreciation. Tapos, yung replacement cost, bawasan mo ng depreciation, yun na yung fair value. Okay? May separate tayong, kasi ang ginagamit ko dyan, table. Okay? Mas maganda kasi na gumamit ka ng table para masundan mo yung concept niya. Papakita ko na lang pag nandun na tayo sa topic na yan. Pero ang concept lang yan, kung walang fair value na level 1 or level 2 inputs, ang pwede mong gawin na lang dyan is i-depreciate mo yung replacement cost. Tapos yun na yung magiging as if fair value mo. Okay, so yun. So ngayon, kapag meron ka ng revaluation, okay, at kailangan mong i-compute or kailangan mong i-recognize yung revaluation, dalawa ang method na pwede mong gawin. Is either gumamit ka ng proportional method or gagamit ka ng elimination method. Ang main difference sa proportional method, tataas yung cost ng asset, tataas din yung accumulated depreciation. So proportional yung increase nila, yung difference revaluation surplus pa rin. Yung elimination method, kung magkano man yung revaluation surplus na mako-compute mo, ang una mong gagawin is to eliminate the accumulated depreciation. Okay? Tapos, kapag wala nang accumulated depreciation, saka mo siya i-recognize or saka mo siya tatanggalin doon sa cost ng asset. So basically, the accumulated depreciation will be eliminated based on the amount of the revaluation surplus. Okay, so yun lang yun. Next, malapit-lapit na tayo. We go to frequency of revaluation. Gaano kadalas ka daw mag-revalue? So, ang sabi lang dyan, for items with significant and volatile changes in fair value annually. Okay? Pero kapag items na insignificant, ang changes between 3 to 5 years. Okay? Made every 3 to 5 years ang ating revaluation. Okay? Ang tanong, paano mo malalaman kung significant or volatile ang fair value change? Okay? Matter of judgment ulit yan. Kasi walang binigay ang standard kung ano ang significant, ano ang insignificant. Kasi depende yan sa company. So, kunyari, yung asset ko or yung company ko may asset, yung asset niya nag-increase siya ng expect natin siguro mga 10% every year. Kung sa isang company, yung 10% na change is already significant, tas sa isang company, ang 10% ay hindi significant, edi bahala na. Okay? So, depende nga. Kaya depende siya kung ano ang policy or ano ang judgment ng company with regards to significant and insignificant changes in fair value. Okay? So, wala kasing specific na percentage. Okay. Tapos, revaluation applied to all assets in A class. Okay? So, paano kapag ang ginawa mo dito is parang group yung pagkaka-revalue. Okay? If an item of PP is revalued, okay, anong mangyayari ngayon dyan? The entire class of PPE to which the asset belongs shall be revalued also. Bakit? Di ba kasi ang ruling, kung ano ang treatment, kung ano yung method na napili, dapat gamitin siya sa buong class or dun sa buong classification na yon. That's why, ang labas niyan, kung yung isa nag-revalue ka na, lahat i-revalue mo na. Kung yung isa cost model, lahat i-cost model mo na. Okay? So, the items within a class of PPE are revalued simultaneously to avoid selective revaluation of asset and the reporting of amounts in the financial statements that are a mixture of cost and values at a different dates. Okay? So, dapat, kung revaluation lahat. Kung cost lahat. Parang ganun siya. Okay? So, yun yung consideration natin. Ngayon, there is a possibility for you to depart or to have a departure of the use of the method. Okay? So, parang example, ganito. Ang gamit mo talaga, revaluation model. Ang nangyari, yung isang asset, hindi mo magamitan ng revaluation model kasi walang fair value talaga na available. Na-exhaust mo na lahat ng method. Okay? Para makahanap ng fair value. Pero rare case lang to ha. Pero kapag ganun, tas talagang ginawa mo na yung lahat ng magagawa mo para makahanap ng fair value, pero hindi pa rin siya or hindi available, then pwede kang maglagay ng exception doon sa notes mo. I-disclose mo na lahat ng asset mo ginamitan mo ng fair value, or lahat ng PPE ginamitan mo ng fair value model, except lang sa asset na to kasi wala talagang fair value, parang ganon. So parang exception siya. Okay? Due to limitations. Okay? So yun. Next, subsequent accounting for revaluation surplus. So sinabi na natin yan, di ba? Ang revaluation surplus, nandun lang yan sa OCI or sa other comprehensive income. Pagkatapos, kapag habang nagagamit yung asset, kung nagde-depreciate yan, piecemeal realization, paunti-unti din natin na i-recognize yan sa retained earnings. Tapos naman, kapag nagkaroon ng impairment, yung asset natin, i-apply muna natin yung revaluation surplus pang-absorb doon sa impairment. Tapos kapag hindi na ma-absorb, gagamitin na natin yung any unabsorbed portion as an expense or an impairment loss doon sa ating P&L or sa ating income statement. Okay? The recognition, last item. Okay? The recognition, the item of property, plant, and equipment is recognized either on disposal or kapag wala na siyang future economic benefits. Okay? So, pag sinabing disposal, hindi niya ibig sabihin disposal na binenta, pwedeng disposal kasi ililipat ng classification or disposal kasi at ang tawag dito, disposal in the form of ibebenta mo, ganyan. So, basta yung iba't ibang klase ng disposal. Okay? Or kapag wala na daw future economic benefit na i-expect. So, parang ilabas doon, hindi mo pa talaga na-dispose pero wala na talaga siyang gamit. So, tapos wala na rin siyang value. Okay? So, kumbaga zero na talaga yung value niyan. Okay? So, yun siya. So, in concept, yan talaga yung ginagawa niya. Kaya nga kapag fully depreciated na yung asset, i-recognize mo na, tanggalin mo na sa records mo. Yan. Ngayon, there are certain situations like in small entities or yung mga entities, in actual practice to, hindi naman ito lalabas talaga sa board exam. Pero in actual practice kasi, merong possibility na meron kang ma-encounter na company na as in lumang-luma na yung PPE niya, wala na talaga siyang mako-consider na economic benefit pero ginagamit pa rin siya ng company. Kasi kailangan nga full disclosure, di ba? So kunyari, yung company may typewriter pa rin. Parang ganun kunyari. May typewriter. Sabihin natin 50 typewriter yung mga yun. Tapos yun pa rin yung ginagamit ng company. Okay? For its operations. Pero kung i-consider mo, wala na talagang value. Hindi na talaga, kumbaga hindi mo na mabibenta, wala nang gustong bumili, ganyan. So wala talagang value yung asset. So dapat zero na siya, di ba? Pero dahil ginagamit pa siya sa operations, hindi siya pwedeng i-derecognize. Okay? Kasi ginagamit pa rin nga. Kaya meron kang may encounter later on na ang property, plant, and equipment merong nakalagay 1 peso, ganyan. So parang piso ang labas niya. Piso ang value kasi hindi pwedeng zero ang lalabas. Okay, so parang ganun yung item niyan. Pero hindi naman siya may encounter sa mga malalaking business. Usually pang mga maliliit na business lang or yung mga entities na hindi talaga nag-upgrade ng property pero kailangan nilang i-recognize pa rin sa books kasi ginagamit nga siya. Okay, so yun yung consideration natin dyan. So that's basically the end of the discussion of the summary and the issues relating to property, plant, and equipment. Okay, let's proceed with the theory questions for our sample illustrative questions relating to property, plant, and equipment. So let's start with question number 1. An item of property, plant, and equipment should be recognized as an asset when it is probable that future economic benefits associated with the asset will flow to the enterprise. Yes. The cost of the asset to the enterprise can be measured reliably. Yes din. So the answer for number 1 is letter A, both 1 and 2. Next, question number 2. Which is not an essential characteristic of property, plant, and equipment? So generally what we discussed is dapat it has physical substance, it is used in the operations, and it is a long-term asset. Okay? So if you look at the information given there, the answer will be letter A because it is not necessary for the company or for the entity or for the property, plant, and equipment to be depreciable in order for it to become PPE. Okay? Kasi may mga PPE na hindi talaga dine-depreciate such as land kasi hindi naman talaga subject to depreciation yan. Okay? So, letter A sagot sa number 2. Number 3. The depreciable amount of an item of property, plant, and equipment is the cost of the asset, okay, less the residual value. Okay, that is the depreciable amount. Okay, generally yun except for double declining method na ang depreciable amount ay yung mismong carrying amount na. Okay? So the answer for number 3 is letter A. Yan lang naman ang concept ng depreciable amount. Kunin mo yung cost, tapos ibawas natin yung residual value. 4. The cost of an item of property, plant, and equipment includes all of the following except ano ang hindi capitalized, di ba? So, bakit hindi capitalized ang trade discount and rebates? Di ba kasi nga binabawas yon sa purchase price? Okay, kaya ang sagot ay letter A. Yung purchase price, import duties, directly attributable cost, lahat yan ay capitalizable. Next, number 5. Directly attributable cost of bringing the asset to working condition for its intended use include all of the following except. Ano dyan ang hindi kasama? Okay, ano dyan ang hindi kasama ang kasama sa directly attributable cost? Ang sagot ay letter A. Because initial operating losses, including yung mga startup, abnormal wastages, yung mga ganyan, those are not capitalizable. So, yun na yung sagot natin dyan. Yung cost of site preparation, delivery handling, estimated cost of dismantling, lahat yan ay capitalizable cost. So, basically, kung binasa mo yung standard, okay, makukuha mo naman na yung sagot letter A. Okay? Next, number 6, example of cost that are expense rather than recognized as an element of cost of PPE include all of the following except. So, ang hinahanap natin yung capitalizable. Okay? So, letter A ang sagot kasi sinabi doon, cost of employee benefits arising directly from the construction or acquisition of an item of property, plant, and equipment. In other words, pwedeng yan ay direct or indirect labor relating to the preparation of the asset. Okay? Sa construction. Tapos kung acquisition naman, yan yung directly attributable overheads. Okay? So, that's going to be capitalizable. Yung opening the new facility, parang yung grand opening, ganun, expense na yon. Yung introducing new product, parang advertising, expense na rin yon. Tapos yung relocating or reorganizing part of these operations, that's also expense. Parang restructuring cost yan. Okay? Next, number 7. Oops. Which is correct concerning measurement of property, plant, and equipment. So, first statement, an entity shall choose either the cost model or revaluation model as accounting policy and shall apply that policy to an entire class of property, plant, and equipment. So, yun, correct yun. The cost model means the property, plant, and equipment are carried at cost less any accumulated depreciation and any accumulated impairment loss. Tama din yun. The revaluation model means that the property, plant, and equipment are carried at the revalued amount, being the fair value to date of revaluation, less any accumulated depreciation and subsequent accumulated impairment loss. Correct din yun. So, ang sagot 1, 2, and 3. So, yun na yan. Next, number 8. The cost of an item of property, plant, and equipment acquired in exchange for a non-monetary asset or a combination of monetary and non-monetary asset is measured at. So, ito yung exchange for other assets, di ba? So, generally, ang gagawin natin dyan will be GRG, fair value of asset given up, plus cash payment less cash received. So, ito na yung sagot, letter A. So, yun naman yung priority talaga natin. So, letter A na yung sagot natin. Okay? Kapag wala, di ba, ang next mga hanapin is yung fair value given up. Fair value received. Pero kapag fair value received, wala nang cash paid, wala nang cash received. So, dapat yun lang. Pero wala din sa choices. So, mali na yun. Tapos kapag wala, book value. So, letter A ang sagot talaga. Number 9, which statement is incorrect regarding initial measurement of your property, plant, and equipment? So, hanapin natin yung incorrect. Although given na yung sagot, discuss lang natin yung letter A, B, and C. PPE should be initially recorded at cost, which includes all costs necessary to bring the asset to working condition for its intended use. So, correct yun. If payment are deferred, then the interest must be recognized as a separate amount or it's going to be expense. So, that's correct. If an asset is acquired in exchange for other asset, it will measure at fair value. Tama din yun. If an asset acquired in exchange for another asset is not measured at fair value, the cost is measured at the carrying amount of the asset received. Mali. Carrying amount of the asset given up. Dapat. So, mali yun. Number 10. If the exchange transaction lacks commercial substance, ibig sabihin walang pinagkaiba yung cash flow characteristics or yung benefit na madederive natin. So, gagawin na lang natin yung huling G sa GRG. So, that's going to be the book value or carrying value given up plus cash paid less cash received. So, that's going to be letter C. Number 11, when payment for an item of property, plant, and equipment is deferred beyond normal credit terms, the cost will be the cash price equivalent or the present value of the payments and any difference will be interest. So, ang sagot ay letter A, cash price equivalent. Or, kung walang cash price equivalent, hanapin mo yung present value. Yun yung next choice mo. 12. If an asset is acquired on credit or by installment, the difference between the total payment and the cash price equivalent should be recognized as interest over the credit period. So, letter D. Okay? Next, which is incorrect concerning self-constructed asset. Letter C yung sagot. Check natin kung bakit siya naging incorrect. The cost of abnormal amounts of wasted material, labor, and other resources incurred in the production of self-constructed asset is included in the cost of assets. So obviously, hindi naman included yung mga yon. In-emphasize natin yan sa discussion. So mali na yung letter C. 14. As to land, capitalizable incidental cost include all of the following except. So, hinahanap natin yung hindi capitalizable na incidental cost. Attorney's fees, kasama yan. Special assessment, kasama yan. Relocation or reconstruction of property belonging to others in order to acquire possession. So, ito yung para hindi natin masira yung property ng iba, kasama din yun. Pero yung sidewalks, pavement, parking lot, and driveways, these are land improvements, which are either capitalizable to your building kung kasama sa blueprint or recognized separately as land improvement kung hindi kasama sa blueprint. So, letter D sagot dyan. 15. Improvements which result to increased future economic benefits include all except, okay? Modification of an item of property to extend the useful life, pasok yan kasi may extend yung useful life. Upgrade of machine parts to improve quality of output, so mag-i-improve yung productive capacity niyan, pwede yun. Adoption of a new product process leading to large reduction in operating cost, bababa yung mga gastos natin, edi capitalizable cost din yun. So, correct yung letter C. Bakit mali yung letter D? Expenditure on repair or maintenance of property, plant, and equipment. Diba? Ang normal repair at saka maintenance ay expense lang. Kaya nga meron tayong repairs and maintenance na expense account. Next, 16, which is incorrect concerning the concept of depreciation. So, bakit letter B ang sagot? Depreciation method should not reflect the pattern. Ayun na yung given na. Dapat, di ba ang sinabi natin, it should reflect the pattern, okay, of the economic benefit. So, mali na yung letter B. A, C, and D, these are all correct based on the provision of the standard. And, yun di ba sinabi natin kanina, emphasize lang natin yung letter D. The useful life is a matter of judgment. Okay, kailangan mo kasing kasi kanyan, hindi naman yan accounting policies, rather an accounting estimate. Okay. 17, which is incorrect concerning the residual value of an item of property, plant, and equipment. Ang sagot ay D. The residual value of an asset shall be reviewed at least at each financial year, and if expectations differs from previous estimate, the change shall be accounted for as a change in accounting policy. O, mali na siya. Anong nagpamali? Change in accounting estimate dapat. So, yun yung nagpamali doon. Okay? So, okay lang naman. Tama lang yung pag-review ng residual value at least at each financial year. Tama lang yun. Okay? Pero hindi siya change in accounting policy. Change in accounting estimate siya. 18. The useful life of an asset or of an item of PPE is either in the form of the time or in the form of the productive capacity. Okay, kaya ang sagot sa number 18 ay letter C, both 1 and 2. Kaya nga, pwedeng gumamit ka ng number of years or sum of the years digits or double declining balance kung ang habol mo ay pagde-depreciate using the period of time ng paggamit mo ng asset. Pero kung ang basis mo ng depreciation is yung capacity niya, yung productive capacity, kung ilan yung kaya niyang i-produce, ilang number of hours yung pwede mong magamit doon sa machinery, then pwede mo siyang gamitin sa number 2. Or pwede mo gamitin yung number 2. Kaya letter C ang sagot dyan. 19. Which statement is true concerning depreciation? So, correct naman tong 1 and 2. Tingnan lang natin. So, kapag nagkaroon ng change in depreciation method, kailangan siyang i-reflect. Okay? And it will be an estimate. Change in accounting estimate. Tama lang siya. Current and future periods. Tapos, ang useful life of PPE shall be reviewed periodically and if expected, tama lang. So, ito din yung kanina. Okay, so tama lang to. Both 1 and 2 are correct. Number 20, if all of the following factors are considered in determining the useful life of an asset except. So, naghahanap ka ng useful life, pwedeng yung usage, physical wear and tear, technical obsolescence, considering yan. Pero ang residual value, hindi naman yan basis ng useful life. It is only used for determining the depreciable amount. So, letter D ang sagot. 21, the sum of units method. Hindi sum of the years digits, ha? sum of units method of depreciation results in a change based on the expected use of the asset. So letter D. Okay? Hindi kasi sum of the year's digits, sum of units. Okay? 22, the cost of fully depreciated asset remaining in service and the related accumulated depreciation, letter C, should not be removed from the accounts and therefore included in property, plant, and equipment without disclosure. Okay? So, yun yung kinikwento ko kanina na kahit siya ay fully depreciated na, hindi pa rin siya pwedeng tanggalin sa libro. Okay? Kaya nga may value pa rin siya. Usually, ang nilalagay dyan is piso ang value, ganyan. Okay? Para, for full disclosure purposes, kasi para alam natin na meron pa rin yung property na yun. Usually, ang ginagawa dyan, for complete disclosure, may naka-label din, may serial number or may tag number or inventory tag number ng mga PPE. Tapos tine-check, okay, kung yung nakalista, kasi for audit purposes din yan eh. Kung yung nakalista ay meron pa talaga, nag-exist pa. So ganun yun. 23, enterprises are encouraged to disclose all of the following amounts except fair value of property, plant, and equipment when the fair value is not materially different from the carrying amount. Okay, so tama lang. Kasi yung gross carrying amount of fully depreciated property that is still in use, kaka-explain lang natin kanina, kailangan meron yan. Carrying amount of property, plant, and equipment retired from active use, di ba kasama yan sa mga movements ng inventory, so kasama yan. Carrying amount of temporary idle property, plant, and equipment, kasama yan sa disclosure. Pero yung fair value na hindi naman different, okay, particularly kung naka-cost model ka, hindi mo naman kailangang i-measure yung fair value. Pero kapag naka-revaluation model ka, kailangan mong i-consider din yung cost, di ba? So, ganun siya, not the other way around. So, letter C ang sagot natin sa number 23. Tapos, ba't 23 tas 33 agad to? Ano nangyari sa numbering? Okay, anyway, ayusin na lang natin mamaya. Okay. An item of property, plant, and equipment that is retired from active use and held for disposal is carried at the NRV, okay? Carrying amount or NRV, whichever is lower. Okay, so generally, ang pasok niyan is either siya ay sa inventory papasok or sa non-current asset held for sale. Okay? So, yun siya. So, ito naman ang pinaka-correct, letter D. Okay? So, 34, gain or loss from disposal of an item of property, plant, and equipment is equal to the difference between the net proceeds and the carrying amount. Yun na yung gain or loss. So, letter D. 35, which statement is incorrect concerning revaluation of property, plant, and equipment? Bakit incorrect yung letter D? Sabi, frequent revaluations are unnecessary for items of property, plant, and equipment with only insignificant movements in fair value. Instead, revaluation every 5 to 10 years may be sufficient. Diba mali to? Ano yung nakalagay? 3 to 5, diba? So, yun yung nakalagay sa standard. Yun yung nagpamali dito. A, B, and C are basically the provisions of the standard. So, walang kailangan baguhin dyan. Or correct sana to, yung letter D, kung ang nakalagay ay 3 to 5 years. Ito kasi 5 to 10 yung nilagay. So, mali na siya. Next, which statement is incorrect concerning revaluation of property, plant, and equipment? Okay, anong incorrect daw? So, ang incorrect ay ito, any revaluation decrease should be debited to revaluation loss a contra equity account. Mali, di ba? Kapag nag-decrease ng revaluation, ibangga mo muna sa revaluation surplus. Tapos kapag kapag hindi na kayang i-absorb ng revaluation surplus, magiging impairment loss. So, mali na tong question na to. Tapos yung last, when the revaluation surplus is realized because of the use of the asset by the enterprise or disposal of the asset, saan mo ipapasok yung na-realize na revaluation surplus? Diba sa retained earnings. So, ipapasok mo siya directly to retained earnings kasi hindi siya pwedeng pumasok sa profit or loss. Okay, so yun yung sagot natin sa theory questions. Okay? So, since this is just part 1 of your PPE, magfo-focus muna tayo dun sa mga problem questions relating to the initial recognition of the asset, yung mga subsequent recognition such as relating to depreciation, revaluation, and others sa next na lang yun. Tapusin lang muna natin yung mga initial na computations natin. So, start tayo dito sa problem 1. Liitan ko kasi para makuha natin lahat ng details. Pasok na ba yan? Okay, pwede na yan. So, start tayo sa question number 1. Antonio Company purchase equipment. Okay, related to the purchase of the equipment will be ito, yung list price, import duties, other transaction taxes, broker's commission, freight, insurance while in transit, installation and assembly, testing cost, legal fees. Okay? With the additional information given. Okay? So, ang tanong ngayon dito, how much is the capitalizable cost of the equipment? Okay? So, tingnan muna natin yung mga additional information. Sabi, the list price is gross of 12% VAT. When the purchase was made, the seller gave 10 and 5% trade discount as well as 2% prompt payment discount. Antonio Company was able to avail of the trade discount but forfeited the prompt payment discount. Anong sabi ng standard? Regardless kung taken or not. Basta kunin natin, tanggalin natin lahat ng available na, tanggalin lahat ng discounts, whether trade discount or other rebates. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin dyan, labas natin yung calculator, kunin natin yung 1 million. Okay? Tapos, gross of 12% VAT kasi yan. So, ang gagawin muna natin ay tanggalin natin yung VAT component niya. So, divide natin yan ng 1.12 para ito lang yung lalabas. Tapos, tanggalin natin yung 10%, 5%, 2%. So, times 0.9 times 0.95 times 0.98. Okay? So, yun yung lalabas dyan. Tanggalin natin lahat ng discount. Of course, pwede namang ang gawin mo, tanggalin mo muna lahat ng discount, saka mo i-consider na divide ng 1.12, ganun din lang, pares lang yung lalabas dyan. Tapos, because Antonio Company was initially not certain as to whether it will buy this equipment, it initially paid the seller 20,000 option money. Based on the agreement, if the sale was pushed through, the said amount shall be deducted from the total amount to be paid. Okay? So generally, anong kwento niya? Option money ba talaga to? Hindi. Earnest money pala to kasi down payment siya. Sinabi, kapag nag-push through, ibabawas yung amount. Okay? Pero kumbaga ang labas niya, initially option money siya, naging earnest money. So parang ganun ang labas niya. Pero ang tanong, i-consider pa ba natin tong second bullet point sa pagko-compute? Ang sagot, hindi na. Kasi, hindi naman siya kailangang isama doon sa pagko-compute kasi later on, ibabawas siya doon sa total amount to be paid eh. So kumbaga, siya ay kasama sa ibabawas sa credit later on. Pero hindi na siya kailangang isama sa debit kasi it is already going to be incorporated dun sa total cost na makakompute later on. Kaya wag na yung second bullet point. Next, to prepare the factory for the new equipment, Antonio Company incurred 14,000 in clearing the site and fixing the mount of the equipment. So ito, okay, ito yung mga additional mount, additional platforms, ganyan. So capitalizable, sama natin mamaya. Pero mamaya na yun. Next, while testing the equipment, the company incidentally produced samples that may be sold for 600. So, hindi yan capitalizable di ba? Kasi sabi natin, yung mga samples na mapoproduce, kapag nabenta, part yan ng, part yan ng other income natin. Okay? The equipment operator underwent training at a cost of 6,000. Expense na yan, di yan capitalizable. After all preparations are made, the company finally started to mass produce inventory and create 8,000 for grand opening. Expense na rin yan. Okay. So, balikan natin yung ating calculator. Ito yun siya. Ang import duties ay capitalizable, so plus 50,000. Other transaction taxes, plus 25,000. Broker's commission, plus 10,000. Freight, plus 5,000. Insurance while transit, plus 1,600. Installation and assembly, plus 3,500. Testing cost plus 1.8. Legal fees for title transfer plus 7.5. Okay, tapos ano pa yung hindi natin na-capitalize? Yung sinabi natin kanina na yung 14,000 dito. Okay, yung ang tawag dito, yung clearing. Okay. Tapos mali itong nakalagay dito, hindi ko yata na-update to. Kasi ang ginawa dyan, kung ibabawas mo yung 600, lalabas yung 165,925. Pero hindi mo dapat i-bawas yun. Okay, kasi ito, di ba nakalagay yan sa taas, specific na diniscuss sa taas, na yung mga kikitain mo, or yung mga products, ito nga, hanapin na lang natin para verbatim natin ma-discuss. Andito na rin yan. Saan na yun? Ayan o. Proceeds from selling items produced while bringing an item of PPE to the location and condition necessary for it to be capable of operating, okay, are not deducted from the cost of item of PPE but recognized in profit or loss. Ibig sabihin yung mga samples na yon hindi siya ibabawas, okay, doon sa cost. Okay, so ibang treatment doon. Okay, so yun yung dahilan. Ang sagot dapat dito ay, 166525. Okay, 866525. So that's the answer for this first problem. Okay, next question tayo. Okay, lakihan ko konti. Okay. Basilio Company purchased a cash generating unit from Crispin Company by paying 600,000 cash and issuing a 1,200,000 non-interest bearing note, okay, payable in 4 equal annual payments. The imputed interest rate for this type of note is 14%. Below is the detail of the fair values of the components of the cash generating unit. So ito yung basket price. Okay? So binili natin yung ating yung isang set or isang cash generating unit, ibig sabihin group of assets. Ang ginawa natin, nagbayad tayo ng 600 na cash, tapos 1,200,000 non-interest bearing note due in 4 equal annual payments. So ibig sabihin, this is going to be a series of payments. So ang gagawin natin ay present value ordinary annuity using 14%. So ilabas natin yung calculator, compute muna tayo ng present value. Okay, this is going to be 1.14, divide, enter. So hindi pa yan yung first period, 4 periods tayo, 1, 2, 3, 4. Tapos an ordinary annuity, so ang gagawin ko, M plus muna natin to. Tapos 1 minus memory recall, equal sign. Tapos i-divide natin ng 0.14. So ito na yung ating present value factor doon sa 1, 2 na babayaran in 4 equal annual payments. So kung 4 equal annual payments yun, magkano ang payment per period? That's going to be 300. So i-multiply mo tong present value factor ng multiply natin yan ng 300,000. Tapos idagdag natin yung 600 na cash na binayaran. So ito yung total na capitalizable cost. 1,474,114. So yun, tama lang to. Ang next mong gagawin is we are going to allocate this total cost using the relative fair market value. So ratio and proportion, i-total muna natin to. So that's going to be 500,000 plus 650 plus 390. So that's 1,540. Ratio and proportion, 500 divided by ito, 650 divided by ito, 390 divided by ito, i-multiply mo dito. So, unahin natin yung 500. So, i-omit ko na yung mga sobrang zero. So, parang 1,540 na lang ang denominator. So, 500 divided by 1,540. Ito yung ratio. Multiply natin doon sa 1,474,114. So, ito yung capitalizable kay land. So, yun yung amount. 478,608. Yung kay building, 650 divided by 1,540. Tapos, multiply natin ng 1,474,114. So, ito naman yun. 622,191. Tapos, yung huli, 390 divided by 1,540. Multiply natin ng 1,474,114. It's going to be ito. 373,315 na lang. So, yun yung answer natin sa question number 2. Okay? Punta tayo sa details. So, use the following information to answer the next 5 questions. So, medyo pwede natin malakihan to konti. Yan. Okay. So, Duterte Company transacted with De Lima Company. In the said transaction, De Lima Company will be transferring its machinery to Duterte Company. The said machinery has carrying amount of 850 and fair value of 920. Okay? So, start tayo sa number 3. Assuming Duterte Company will be exchanging its equipment plus 200,000 cash for the machinery and its equipment has carrying amount of 900 and the fair value of 780, what will be the amount that the Duterte company will recognize the machinery considering that the exchange has commercial substance. So kung with commercial substance, hanapin mo muna yung fair value of asset given up. Okay? So ito yun, di ba? So exchanging its equipment plus 200,000 cash for the machinery, and its equipment has carrying amount of 900 plus ay 900 pero fair value 780. So 780 ang kukunin natin. Yan yung fair value of asset given up plus cash paid, so plus 200. O kaya 980 na yan. Okay, so yun na yung kwento nun. Question number 4. Assuming that the company will exchange its equipment plus 200,000 cash for the machinery and its equipment has carrying amount of 900 fair value of 780, at what amount will the company recognize the machinery considering that the exchange has no commercial substance? So kung walang commercial substance, okay, edi kukunin mo lang yung carrying value plus yung cash na matatanggap mo ay ibabayad mo. So 900 plus 200, so that's 11. Okay? Next, Duterte will be issuing its 1 million bonds currently traded at 97 to acquire the machinery. How much is the capitalizable cost? Okay? So in that case, kukunin mo lang yung fair value of the liability issued kasi wala namang binigay na fair value of the asset received. So kunin mo lang yung 1 million times 97%. So 970 na yan. Duterte will issue 10,000 shares of its 50 par value ordinary shares currently traded in the market at 95 per share to acquire the machinery. So that's going to be 10,000 shares times 95 per share. Kasi yun yung mas reliable na fair value kasi active market yun. So yun ang gagamitin natin. So 950. Okay? Tapos, last, Duterte received the machinery as a donation. The Lima company is a shareholder of Duterte. How much is the capitalizable cost of the machinery? So, balikan lang natin yung detail na binigay. So, carrying amount is 850. Fair value is 920. Okay, so 920 nang gagamitin natin. Yun na yung value ng asset. Tapos, shareholder, di ba? So, credit tayo ng donated capital na 920. Okay, so yun yung question 7 natin. Yan. Punta tayo kay question 8. Anong mga tanong? Capitalizable cost of the land and the new building. Okay, so in order to answer this, we need to compute or we need to prepare a table. So ilagay natin yan. So ano yung mga pinapahanap dito? Compute na lang natin lahat. So kunin natin yung land, old building, new building, at saka land improvement. So ilagay na lang natin lahat yun. So this will be land. Ito yung old building, new building, tapos ito yung land improvements. So ganyan na lang natin para lahat is makonsider. Isin lang natin yung okay. Tapos yun na lang. Tapos ito ay isin lang natin. Okay, sige. So isa-isay natin. Sabi, Electrode Company purchased land and building for a lump sum price of 5 million. An independent appraiser assessed that the total cost must be allocated at a ratio of 8:2 for the land and building respectively. Okay, so ang gagawin natin muna, i-allocate natin itong 5 million, 8:2. Okay, so yung land, that's going to be 5 million times 0.8. Tapos yung old building, 1 million na lang. Diretso na natin doon. Okay, so yun na yun. Immediately after purchase, the existing building was demolished to make way for the construction of the new building. So, later on, whatever cost that is associated with the demolition will be capitalized to the new building. The summary of costs incurred are provided below. So, una, legal cost of conveying land. So, saan i-capitalize yan? Doon sa land. So, 40,000 dito. Special assessment na 20,000 sa land din yan. Demolition cost na 90,000, saan may recognize? Sa new building, di ba? So, dito yan. 20,000 Scrap from the demolition na 20,000, ibabawas natin yan dito sa new building. Materials, labor, and overhead na 22 million, that's going to be capitalizable to the new building. 22, sorry. Okay. Cash discount on materials purchased not taken, so kailangan nating ibawas yung 120 dito. Clerical and other expenses related to construction. So, pwede yan. Okay, kasi related yan sa construction. So, 56 dito. Excavation cost na 400 sa building din yan. Wait, freeze ko lang tong pane na to para hindi magalaw. Okay, para hindi kahit madagdagan. Okay. Next, architectural fees and building permit na 240. So dito pa rin 'yan. Tapos supervision by management on construction. Okay, that's relating to ang tawag dito administrative overhead, pwede pa rin 'to, 48. Insurance premiums paid for workers na 520, dito pa rin 'yan. Payments for claims for injuries not covered by insurance, expense to, itong 180. Savings on construction, ignored yan, hindi yan kino-consider. Cost of changes to plans and specifications due to inefficiencies, expense din lang yan. Paving of street and sidewalks not included in blueprint na 40, so sa land improvement yan. Income earned on a vacant space rented as parking lot during construction. So, ano gagawin mo doon? Wala. Okay. So, ano ngayon ang gagawin natin dyan? We are going to get the total. So, dito na lang ako maglalagay ng sum. Okay. So, wait, bakit na binawas to? Vacant space rented as parking lot during construction. Wait, check muna natin yan. So, ito yung land natin for 120. May na-miss pa tayong item. Bakit for... Wait lang. Ay, may survey cost pa pala doon. Sorry, hindi ko nakita. 60,000. Okay, so yun na. So, for 120, yung ating land. So, ang mga laman ng ating land is yung 4 million, yung 40 na legal cost, yung special assessment, at saka survey cost. So, yun yun. Tapos, yung sa old building, yung pagkakabili lang. Yung sa new building, this is going to be 23,214. Okay. Pero ang nakalagay dito is 23,178. Wait, i-double check ko kasi ang main na difference lang naman nito, yung 23,214 at saka ito is itong kinitang to. Wait, i-check ko lang kung ano yung niya. Ay hindi, tama lang. Ang concept ngayon nito is ganito. Hindi naman kasi to part doon sa na-produce, di ba? Sinabi kasi yung na-produce lang. Yun yung pagiging part ng income. So ito, parang ang nangyari, incidental na kinita. So tama lang, magbabawas tayo ng 36,000 dito. Yan. So 23,178. Hindi siya product eh. Hindi naman siya product na na-generate. Okay? Nung habang piniprepare mo yung asset. Okay? So yun. Kaya ito yun. Tapos yung land improvement 40. So yun na yung mga answer natin dito. Attach na lang natin yan later. Okay. Next, punta tayo kay number 9. Si Pokemon Go. So, Pokemon Go company purchased land and building for a total cost of 800,000. Assessment on the building showed that the building is unusable, although its scrap can be sold for 20,000. The company raised the building at a cost of 80,000. How much cost is capitalized to the land and the building respectively? So, ang sagot dyan ay lahat ng nagastos papasok kay land because the building is unusable, meaning there is no attributable fair value or amount that can be capitalized to the building. Kasi unusable na nga siya, so wala nang economic benefit dyan. So ang gagawin mo, 800 plus 80 minus 20. So 860 will all go to the land, building 0. Hindi siya katulad nung nasa taas ng kaninang activity or yung kaninang example kasi yun, usable or may fair value talaga na naka-allocate. So ibig sabihin may halaga pa talaga yung building na yan. Okay? Kaya yung kung babalikan mo dito sa sagot natin kanina dito, yung old building na to, yung value niya, i-record mo as a loss later on kapag nag-demolish ka. So magde-debit ka ng loss, mag-credit ka ng old building. Okay, ganun yan. Next, number 10, Gohan Company. Lakihan ko na konti. Gohan Company acquired an oil rig for 400 million, installation and other necessary cost in bringing the equipment to its intended condition for use totaled 80 million. Gohan Company is required by law to dismantle the equipment and restore the site where it was installed after 20 years. The estimated decommissioning and restoration costs are 40 million. The imputed rate of interest is 12%. So how much is the initial cost of the equipment? So anong gagawin mo ngayon dyan? Siyempre obvious na capitalize na yung 400 tsaka yung 80. Ang issue na lang natin is yung decommissioning cost na 40 million pero magagastos pa siya after 20 years. So ito yung mga ganitong question, dapat binibigay na yung present value. Pero in this case, hindi binigay, so magtiyaga tayo. Compute tayo ng 20 years na present value factor using 12%. So 1.12, divide, enter, hindi pa yan. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Tapos multiply natin sa 40 million. So ito yung additional na capitalizable cost. So idagdag mo na lang yan sa 480. So magiging 484,146,670. 671. So yun na yung sagot natin dito. So yung ang nagpapahirap lang dito yung present value ng decommissioning. Next, Halimuyak Company purchased a new service vehicle with fair value of 900 by paying 600 and trading their old service vehicle which cost 1 million and accumulated depreciation is 850. What is the amount that will at what amount will the new service vehicle be recorded? Okay, so ang nangyari dyan, ang fair value nung ating ang fair value ay 900 pero ang ginawa, ang nangyari is pinayagan kang magbayad ng 600 tapos iti-trade in mo yung 1 million ang 1 million ang cost tapos ang book value ay 850, no? So parang may difference pa siya na 150. So parang walang binigay na trade-in value basta in-accept na lang yon. So generally, you're going to recognize it at the trade-in value na 150 plus yung 600. So 750 ang lalabas. Wala naman kasing binigay na separate na trade-in value. So we can always assume that the carrying amount is already the accepted trade-in value. We will not recognize it at 900. Okay, hindi 900 ang ilalagay natin dyan kasi that is the fair value of the new service vehicle kung nagkaroon ng actual na settlement lang na puro cash. Pero ang nangyari kasi dito is nagkaroon ng trade-in. Okay, so yun. Kung may binigay na fair value ng trade-in, ang gagawin mo, dagdag mo yung cash at saka yung fair value ng trade-in. Tas may gain or loss na lalabas dyan. Okay, so yun. So, yun yung sagot sa 11. Next, number 12. Ay, medyo madami to. Pero depreciation lang na diretso to. So, the company purchased equipment by issuing a note amounting to 1 million due in 2 years. The equipment is normally sold at 930. Under a 30-day credit period and receive a 30,000 cash discount if paid in cash. So, ibig sabihin, ang capitalizable cost lang talaga natin is cash price equivalent 900. Kasi, may 30,000 daw na discount if paid in cash. So, ano ang cash price equivalent natin? 900. 930 minus 30. So, 900. The equipment is expected to be sold at 100 after its 10-year life. So, yun yung residual value. The equipment has a normal production capacity of 10 million units. Okay? Or 36,000 machine hours. Okay? Bago magkaroon ng major repair. Ito yung actual production. Tapos, ito yung binigay na machine hours na kailangan to produce units. Okay? So, sabi, compute the depreciation expense, accumulated depreciation and book value. Okay? Medyo mahaba-haba to. May mga table pang gagawin. Pero basically, bigyan na lang natin ng idea kung paano mag-compute. Okay? So, under the straight line depreciation, ang gagawin lang natin dyan, kunin natin yung 900. Bawas natin yung 100. Tapos, divide natin ng... Magkano yan? Ilang years to? 10 years na? 10 years. Okay. So, 10. So, yun na yan. 80. For SYD, 10 years kasi yung life. Iko-compute lang muna natin yung 1 year depreciation lang niya para mas madali. So, ngayon, SYD 10 years. So, 10 times 11 divided by 2. This is the total denominator natin. Kung ayaw mong maniwala, gawin mo yung 10 plus 9 plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. 55 din lalabas doon. Okay? So, for the first year, ang gagawin natin will be 10 divided by 55. Kasi 10 years pa ang naiiwan divided by 55. So, ito yon. Multiply natin sa depreciable amount na 800,000. So, ito yung lalabas. 145,455 na lang. Okay? Tapos, pag double declining balance method, ang gagawin mo lang twice the straight line. So, kung straight line, di ba, 1 over 10 ang lalabas doon. Or 10%. So, kung dodoblehin natin siya, 2 over 10. So, that's basically 20% or 0.2. So, 20% multiply mo na siya doon sa carrying amount. Okay? I-ignore natin ang depreciable amount dito. So, that's going to be 1 million. So, that's 200,000. Okay. Ay, sorry. 900 pala, no? Sorry. Ano ba? Ang gulo. 900,000 times 0.2. So, 180. Okay. Tapos, machine hours naman tayo dito. Kailangan natin mag-compute ng machine hours. So, ang sinabi kasi ganito, no? Nung first year, nakapag-produce tayo ng 1,200,000 units. At ang sinabi, for every machine hour, makakaproduce ka ng 300 units. Okay? So, ang gagawin natin, kunin mo yung 1,200,000 units na na-produce, i-divide natin ng 300. Nakagamit ka ng 4,000 machine hours. So, 4,000 machine hours divided by 36,000 machine hours, yung total na pwede mong magamit. So, ito yon. I-multiply natin sa depreciable amount na 800,000. So, yun yun. 88,889. Okay? Ito yung input method based on machine hours. Kapag output method naman, ang sinabi, ang na-produce mo daw is ito out of the total 10 million. So, that's going to be 1,200,000 divided by 10 million. So, 12% times depreciable amount pa rin is 800,000. So, 96. So, yun yun. So, from there, pwede mo nang ituloy-tuloy kung gusto mong mag 5 years, ganyan, or gusto mong gumawa ng table, sundan mo lang yung format ng pag-compute. Okay? Next, punta tayo kay Jamaica Company. So, Jamaica Company acquired equipment for 600. The asset has 15 years useful life with no residual value. The company depreciates similar items using SYD. Okay? 4 years after purchase, the company decided to change the depreciation method to double declining balance method. At this point, the asset's useful life was revised to 10 years from the date of original purchase and the residual value was changed to 50. How much should the depreciation be for the current year? Okay, so ang una natin gawin, alamin muna natin kung magkano yung carrying amount ng ating asset for after depreciating it ng 4 years. Okay, so ang una natin gawin, di ba SYD yung una niyang gamit, tas 15 years. So, computein muna natin yung ating denominator. 15 times 16, di ba? N times N plus 1. Tapos, i-divide natin ng 2. So, 120 ang total denominator. Nagamit natin siya ng 4 years. So, ano yung numerator na ginamit natin? I-note mo lang yung 120 ha. 15 plus 14 plus 13 plus 12. So, 4 na taon ka. So, 54. So, 54 out of 120, ito na yung na-depreciate natin. 45% ng ating depreciable amount. Ang depreciable amount during that time, di ba wala naman siyang residual value. So, 600 na rin yun. So, i-multiply mo yung 0.45 ng 600. So, ito na yung total na na-depreciate. Okay? So, in other words, ang mangyayari kasi is ganito. Ito yung sagot ha. So, ang carrying value before change in depreciation method is equal to 600,000 minus 270. 330,000. So, yun. Pagkatapos, magkakaroon tayo ng depreciation using new method. Okay? So, in this case, anong gagawin mo dun sa new method natin? Di ba sinabi gagamit ka na daw ng tawag dito? Double declining, at ang years na gagamitin mo will be 10 years from the date of original purchase. So, ibig sabihin, minus 4 years, 6 years na lang yung naiiwan. So, ang gagawin mo ngayon, anong ratio mo? Twice the straight line. So, 2 over 6 kasi 6 years na lang yung naiiwan. So, ito yung magiging depreciation natin. Multiply mo dun sa carrying amount. Ito yung carrying value. Multiply mo yung 330. So, 110 ang depreciation natin. Yun siya. Using the new ratio. Okay. So, yan. Next. Punta tayo ngayon kay 14. So, basic lang to na revaluation. Killian Jornet Company bought a facility that cost him 10 million 5 years ago, having a 20-year useful life. Okay. Currently, the asset has accumulated depreciation amounting to 2375 based on straight line depreciation. At the beginning of the 6th year, the company evaluated that the sound value of the asset should be 15 million while all other features did not change. Under the revaluation method, compute for the revaluation surplus and the depreciation expense at the end of the 6th year. Okay. So, ano ang mangyari dyan? So, basically, ganito ang gagawin natin. Accumulated depreciation is 2375 for 5 years, di ba? So, mag-work back tayo. Kailangan nating alamin kung magkano yung tawag dito. Kung magkano yung although alam naman natin na 20 years yun, pero kailangan nating alamin kung magkano yung although given na rin yung carrying amount pala, no? So, walang problema. Kasi, di ba 10 years, accumulated depreciation is 2375. So, pag magko-compute tayo, diretso na lang, 10 million minus 2375. Tama ba yung tinatype ko? Tama. 2375. So, ito yung ating carrying amount. Tapos, sinabi, kung ito yung carrying amount at ang binigay ay sound value. So, ibig sabihin, ito na yung mismong fair value natin. So, i-compare na lang natin yan doon sa 15 million. So, gagawin mo, 15 million minus 7625. Diretso ko na lang, baliktarin ko, minus 15 million na lang dito. Diretso. So, ito yung magiging revaluation surplus. So, as of January, so kung January, gumalaw to. Wait lang ah. Sige, bayaan mo na. So, January 1, 20, anong year to? Sige, basta January 1 na lang. Ng January 1 ng year 6 na lang para mas may reference tayo. So, January 1 ng year 6, ang revaluation surplus is equal to 7,375. 7,375,000. Okay? So, yan yun. Pagkatapos, ang magiging carrying value natin will now be 15 million. Okay? Pagkatapos, pagdating natin ng December 31, year 6, magkano ang magiging revaluation surplus at depreciation? Ito na yung lalabas na sagot. Ngayon, ang tanong, paano mo makakompute yan? Di ba sinabi, 20 years yon, 5 years ago, so 15 years na lang yung naiwan. Hindi daw nagbago yung mga other features ng asset. So ibig sabihin, yung revaluation surplus na 7,375,000, it is going to be amortized over 15 years. So ibig sabihin, ito yung mawawala after 1 year. Ibabawas ko to doon sa 7,375,000, ito yung may iwan, kaya yun yun. Okay? Tapos, doon sa ating doon sa ating depreciation expense, kaya natin kailangang i-work back kasi hahanapin natin kung magkano yung ating residual value. Okay? So, ang mangyari kasi dyan, paano natin nakuha yung depreciation expense? Okay. So, ang gagawin natin, balikan natin. Okay. So, kung ang accumulated depreciation ay 2, 3, so, basta establish na to ha, balikan natin yung depreciation expense ngayon. Okay. So, kung 2,375 yan, over 5 years, ibig sabihin, ang ini-expect na depreciation per year is 475,000 per year. Ngayon, kung straight line ang ginamit doon, mag-work back tayo ng computation, paano kaya niya kinompute yun? Diba? So, kung straight line tayo, diba ang computation mo, cost minus residual value divided by useful life, diba? So, yun yung lalabas doon. Ito yung formula mo, cost minus residual value divided by useful life. So, yan yung formula natin para makuha natin yung amount na magkano yun? 475. So, yan yun. Alam natin yung cost. Okay, ang cost, kopyahin ko na lang to ha. Igitna ko lang to. Wait lang. Nakakausi kasi. Ayan, so ganyan. So, actually, workback ang gagawin mo dito. So, ngayon, ang cost natin, magkano yung cost natin? Diba, the cost is actually equal to, magkano na yun? Sa problem, nakalimutan ko tuloy. 10 million. Okay? Minus residual value. So, minus X. Hindi pa kasi natin alam yung residual value. Yung useful life, alam natin na yun ay 20 years. Tapos ito, same ulit. Yan siya. So, ngayon, ang gagawin natin, itong 20, ilipat natin sa kabilang side. So, magiging 1 million minus X is equal to 475 tapos times 20. Okay, so ito yun. So, ang lalabas ngayon dyan, kung may iwan yung X, ilipat na lang natin doon. 10 million to. Mali pa yung amount na nilagay ko. 1 million lang. So, 10 million yon. Tapos, 9,500,000 to. Ang residual value, 500,000. So, ngayon, X therefore is equal to 500,000. So, alam na natin yung residual value. Bakit kailangan yung residual value? Kasi doon sa problem, gagamitin natin siya later on sa pagko-compute ng depreciation. So, kung ito na yung bagong cost natin at 500,000 pa rin ang residual value, divided by 15 years, yun na yung magiging sagot natin na depreciation expense. So, magiging, ang computation natin, 15 million minus 500,000 divided by 15 years. So, ito yung lalabas. 966,667. So, yun. So, kung hindi mo makuha yung residual value, hindi mo makukuha ng tama yung depreciation expense. Okay? So, yun yung sagot natin sa number 14. So, basic level revaluation lang yan. Okay? So, we go to number 15. This time, similar ang information, pero ang difference niya, the 15 million given here is already the replacement cost. So, replacement cost siya, hindi siya yung fair value. So, ibig sabihin, kung replacement cost yan, kailangan pa natin gumawa ng table para ma-determine yung totoong revaluation surplus. Kasi pag ang ginawa mo, pinag-compare mo lang yung carrying value at saka ito, tapos pinagbawas mo, hindi na yun, mali yun. Kasi replacement cost yan, hindi yan fair value. So, gagawa tayong table, gamitin natin yung Excel natin, gawa pa tayong bago. Okay, so ganito ngayon ang mangyari dyan. So, meron tayong tatlong column. Ito yung replacement cost column. Ito yung cost na column. Wait lang. R cost na lang to para replacement cost. Tapos ito yung appreciation. So, yan yung columns na gagamitin natin. Okay? So, ito yung replacement cost. Wait lang, ayusin ko lang. Okay. So, may replacement cost column tayo, may cost column tayo, tsaka may appreciation. Okay? So, ang una natin ipa-plot is yung cost. Magkano yung cost natin kung replacement cost ang usapan? Di ba 15 million? So, ang sagot, 15 million. Okay? Magkano ang cost natin kung historical cost ang pinag-uusapan? 10 million. So, ang appreciation natin is yung difference nito. So, ito ang ating appreciation. Next, kunin mo ang accumulated depreciation. Di ba hindi nagbago? 500,000 pa rin ang accumulated depreciation. 500,000 pa rin dito. So, walang nagbago. So, ang appreciation niya is 0. Okay. So, with that, lagyan natin ng linya dito para makuha lang natin yung discussion. So, anong lalabas dito? Kapag kinuha mo yung accumulated. But accumulated residual value dapat yan. Sorry. So, cost minus residual value, anong lalabas dito? Ito yung depreciable amount na pinag-uusapan natin. So, gagawin mo yun at saka yun lang. Pagmaminusin mo lang. Okay? So, ganun din, wala ring appreciation. Ang mangyayari dyan, same lang. Yung appreciation yan will be the same amount sa taas kasi nga hindi naman nagbago yung residual value. Sorry, bakit accumulated yung ano dun kanina. Okay. So, ang next natin gagawin, tanggalin ko lang yung linya. Okay? Ang next natin gagawin ngayon dyan is i-consider natin magkano ang accumulated depreciation. Ito na yung accumulated depreciation na pinag-uusapan natin. So, based on sa diniscuss natin kanina, nung nasa first part ng discussion natin, kailangan nating ma-project kung magkano yung accumulated depreciation under the replacement cost. At para ma-compute mo yon, kailangan mong kunin yung ratio ng depreciation dito. Okay? So, parang ang labas nun, ganito lang yon. Kung naka-depreciate ka na ng 5 years out of the 20 years, then 25% depreciated na yung ating asset. So, therefore, ipoproject natin dito. So, that's going to be 9,500,000 times 0.25. Ito yung depreciation natin under cost. Ipoproject natin siya dito. So, same din lang. Ito, multiply natin ng 0.25. Ito yung ating depreciation kung replacement cost ang usapan. So, therefore, kailangan nating i-increase yung accumulated depreciation ng 1 to 50. Yung difference dito, ito na yung remaining depreciable amount. Okay? And the remaining depreciable amount is computed based on the difference ng depreciable amount at yung accumulated depreciation na na-compute natin. So, ganun yung mangyari. At yung difference na ngayon dito, ito at saka ito, is going to be the revaluation surplus. So, yun. So, ang mangyari, revaluation surplus natin ngayon ay, ang revaluation surplus natin ay 3,750. So, looking at the information, ang revaluation surplus ay 3,750. Ang ating depreciation expense ay i-base natin dito. Tapos, di ba, 15 years na lang yung may iwan. So, parang ang mangyari ngayon dyan, yung depreciation expense natin for this year, kunin mo na lang to, divide natin ng 15 years na may iwan, ito na yun. Kaya 725 yung lalabas na depreciation expense. Okay? So, ngayon, ganun ang computation. Kung gusto mong malaman paano i-compute or kung paano gagamitin yung proportionate approach or yung proportional at saka elimination, so ganito gagawin mo. Kapag proportional approach tayo, paano ang entry natin sa revaluation surplus? Ang gagawin natin, tataasan natin yung cost ng facility na lang. So, PPE na lang kunyari. Ang increase daw niya 5 million. So, 5 million ang debit ko dito. Tapos, tataasan ko din yung accumulated depreciation. Based on the information, ang increase ng accumulated depreciation is 1 to 50. So, 1 to 50. Tapos, credit ako ng revaluation surplus dito na 3,500. Ay, tama ba? 3,750 pala. Ba't 3,500 yung nakalagay dito? Sorry. 3,750. Tama naman, di ba? 3,750. Yun. Ngayon, proportional approach yan. Kapag elimination method, okay, yung revaluation surplus, tatanggalin natin from the amount of the accumulated depreciation. Okay, so ang mangyari dyan, ganito. Debit ka ng accumulated depreciation, di ba ang balance lang ng accumulated depreciation, 2375 lang. So, ang balance niyan, 2375. Tapos, magbabawas ka pa ng yung PPE. Magkano pa yung kulang? Kasi elimination nga eh. So, kung 3750 yan, minus 2375, 1375 pa. So, dito yun. 1375. Tapos, credit ka ng revaluation surplus, 3750. Yan na. So, ganun yung mangyari dyan. Okay? Pansin mo, kung babalikan mo yung table, itong 2375 na nilagay mo dito, yun din naman yung actual talaga na accumulated depreciation mo under the cost. So, parang kinokopya mo lang. Okay, so ganun lang naman yung mangyari dun. So, anyway, yun siya. Tapos, dahil ito na yung bagong remaining depreciable amount, ito na yung magiging basis mo ng subsequent depreciation mo. Kaya nga nung ginamit natin yung 15 years, ito yung lalabas. So, yun yung sagot natin dito. Okay? Last question, nung basic natin. So, Labandero Company made improvements to lease property amounting to 3 million exactly at the beginning of the third year of a 10-year lease contract. So, nagastos mo yung 3 million nung ang naiiwan pa sa'yo ay 7 years. Exactly on the third year. So, 8 years pala. Sorry. So, 8 years yon. Kasi magsa-start pa lang yung third year ng 10-year lease contract mo. So, 8 years yung may iwan sa lease contract mo. And the leasehold improvement will last for at least 15 years. Okay? The improvement has estimated residual value of 10% of the original amount, and the lease contract can be renewed for another 10 years, and the company is certain that it will exercise the renewal option. Okay? So ngayon, ito yung mga consideration natin. Ang ating lease term, ilan pa? Diba meron ka pang 8 years dun sa original, tapos pwede mo pa siyang i-renew for another 10 years, so 18 years ang total niyan. Yung ating useful life, ang useful life natin is equal to 15 years lang. Okay? So obviously, dapat ang gagamitin natin yung shorter. So gagamitin natin as yung 15 years. Okay, yan kasi yun. So ngayon, paano ka magko-compute ng depreciation? So ang depreciation natin ngayon is equal to, so pag silent yung problem, straight line lang tayo. So ang gagawin natin will be 3 million, labas lang natin yung calculator. 3 million. May binigay na residual value. Lagi mong tatandaan kapag nag-lease ka, okay, at may residual value man yan, hindi sa'yo mapupunta ang residual value. Kasi, parang paanglabas yan, pag aalis ka, hindi mo naman pwedeng kunin yung leasehold improvement eh. Mag-stay yan doon sa inuupahan mo. Kaya i-ignore mo ang residual value. So, 3 million tayo diretso, tapos i-divide natin ng 15 years, 200,000 na. Kaya yun yung sagot, 200,000 ang ating depreciation. Okay. So, that is the answer doon sa ating first part ng property, plant, and equipment.